I don't know if you guys can see, but how cute is this little, I'm gonna take it out. How cute is this little clip? I know it's not quite October yet, but obsessed. All right, you guys, happy palette week, day 4. Welcome back to another installment in palette week, where every single day for 7 days straight, I am posting some sort of palette themed content. I absolutely love talking about eyeshadow palettes, and if you guys have any content recommendations or ideas about eyeshadow palettes that you want to see me film, let me know in the comments below. Today I am filming a video that I saw Samantha March do a couple of months ago and knew that I wanted to film this myself. It is, we're gonna be chit-chatting today about 10 eyeshadow palettes in my collection that I don't love, but like also don't see myself decluttering, and the reasons why. And I feel like on my channel I filmed like palettes I would declutter if I could get my money back. Even if I could get my money back for these 10 eyeshadow palettes, with the exception of maybe like 2, yeah, with the exception of like 2, I would still keep these palettes rather than like trading it for my money back, but they just aren't like my tippity top favorite loves, and we're gonna get into it. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. My newest obsession, you guys, is Olipop. Probably for the last like few months. I was never a huge pop drinker before, but I love that it has like light carbonation, because I love me a carbonated drink. Instead of drinking 2 energy drinks a day, now I have an Olipop and an energy drink. And I'm like really big onto getting my probiotics, and this has, I think, prebiotics. Oh, maybe this says prebiotics, which I've been trying to find somewhere. I'm obsessed. So this is not sponsored. I wish it was though. All right, you guys, I think I want to start. I have 3 palettes from Natasha Denona actually, so I think maybe we'll start there. And my reason for like not wanting to declutter these 3 is, 1, they're all midi-sized palettes, and I finally got around to labeling all of my pans within each palette. And now I feel like I basically just, like, I think of it now in terms of almost a really large Natasha Denona single collection. And I've been having fun making Natasha Denona custom palettes. In fact, here is my newest custom creation. So this is just a bunch of Natasha Denona midi eyeshadow shades scattered throughout from a bunch of Natasha palettes that I just put into the retro palette. So really, I don't see myself ever decluttering a Natasha Denona, specifically midi palette. Well, really, minis I could see, but anything above that I couldn't see myself decluttering, just because the shadows are so easy to take out and then kind of like jumble around and kind of make your own creations, which is just so fun. Okay, so up first I have my Natasha Denona pastel palette, and I hemmed and hawed about this palette for so long. My sister actually ended up giving this to me for my birthday. Another reason that I probably wouldn't declutter it, but the pastels in here are very light pastels, which is to be expected, but also I think I was just expecting them to pack more of a punch. And I feel like this is really more of like a pastel teal and blue palette for the most part, as opposed to like a really rainbow palette. And I don't know, I think I feel that way because I feel like these 3 shades just feel really similar. Then you have your other blues. And I also just feel really confused when looking into this palette and trying to think of creating a full look using just this palette. I think as a companion palette, it does make a good companion. I will say there's a few shades that I was just like a little bit let down in the quality. I'm thinking specifically of Illusion. It was more of just like this sheen sort of a shade, nothing too intense, which is fine. There are some shades that I really do enjoy out of here. I love the shade Zest, I love the shade Bubble, and then I also really like Limoncello, as well as some of the other shimmers. So it's pretty, but like if I wasn't doing like I don't love it, but I won't declutter it is essentially what I'm getting at. It's not a fave, but also I also love this outer packaging. Like it just reminds me of like a cotton candy sky almost. So wouldn't declutter, but definitely not a favorite palette. Next we have the Natasha Denona Zendo palette, and this one I have taken shades out of, so this won't look exactly like the Natasha Denona Zendo currently, but as I'm talking about this, I'm talking through like if this was, all the shades in here were from the Natasha Denona Zendo. In fact, this was the second kind of like custom palette I made. I made a fall one, well, both kind of fall, but one like more cool toned and then one more warm toned, and this one definitely has the majority of the shade, well, not majority matte. I made a warm and a cool palette for the fall season out of my Natasha shades. That is not what this is about. The Zendo palette, I was so disappointed in the quality of some of the shades, and even the shades that like the brown shades, I just didn't even feel like they blended well together, and some of them just did not blend as well as I know Natasha Denona shadows to blend. They just weren't as good. The color story I was so excited for. This was probably the Natasha Denona palette back in the day that I was most excited for its release. I'm thinking through like the I Need a Nude and the Yucca palette this year, which I was like so excited for that color story. But overall, I just felt like the Natasha Denona Zendo palette, the quality in that one just was not superb. Definitely didn't love the palette like I thought I was going to, but also won't declutter because now I'm making my own custom Natasha palettes. And then the last Natasha palette that I did not end up falling in love with, but again, won't be decluttering. This one looks like a very pink and red palette now. Again, because I've kind of shuffled around some of the shades, but the Natasha Love palette is another one that I kind of hemmed and hawed on for maybe closer to 2 years. Maybe it was just a year. Maybe it was just a year. I can't remember if I got it on sale or not. I feel like maybe I saw it on sale, and so I ended up getting it for a bit of a discount. It wasn't half off, I don't believe. Or did my ex give this to me for Valentine's Day? That also could have happened. Oh my gosh, I can't remember anything. But I was thinking this was going to be my new favorite Natasha midi palette, and it just did not turn into that. I felt very confused by the color story again when trying to think of a full look to create with the palette, and it just wasn't something super inspiring to me. But because the color story confuses me, now I can just take the shadows out and create something new. So those three Natasha palettes, definitely not loves, definitely not favorites, especially in thinking through just the original color stories, but won't be decluttering those. Next, let's talk about two quads that are not faves, but I won't declutter, and both are very expensive, which is part of the reason I feel like I won't declutter. It's actually both of the quads too that are the two palettes that I'm like, well, maybe if I could get my money back for these two, I would. But up first, we have this Charlotte Tilbury quad. This is the Exaggerized quad. These quads are just so expensive, and I was so excited because everybody raves about the Charlotte Tilbury quads. And yes, they're nice, they're convenient, especially if you're looking for a quick comfort reach, especially for like running out the door for work or even traveling for work. But in my opinion, they're just really nothing special. But I spent so much money on this. I also do kind of just want to have a Charlotte Tilbury quad in my collection for reference, because I make YouTube videos and it's nice to have the reference point, or just like one Charlotte Tilbury quad. It definitely does not make me excited to buy any other Charlotte Tilbury quads. It's just absolutely not a favorite in my collection, but I won't be decluttering. And then the other one is this Pat McGrath quad. This is the Venus and Floor, the Voyeuristic Vixen quad. I love this really beautiful shade in this palette, especially as I've gotten more into just like sparkly shades. Like it's so pretty, so wet, so glossy, but I will say it kind of has a bit of glitter fallout, that shade specifically. This one is also really beautiful, especially just like for a beautiful satin taupey sparkly shade on the eyes. But in all reality, I kind of wish I did not spend the 60 or 65 or however much this is. Kind of wish I didn't spend that much money on it, because these two shades are really nothing special in my collection, and I just need to like come to the realization that like indie shadows, like indie shadows, that you can find these really special, really fun shades as well. Yes, it's fun to collect my Pat McGrath palettes, and a part of me thinks I will still continue to collect the larger Mothership palettes, especially if it's like a color story I really like. Granted, we'll never pay full price because Pat McGrath always has sales going on her website, but when it comes to the quads, it's just like not worth adding to my collection in my opinion anymore, just because like usually it's not all 4 of the shades are super special, and it's like you're paying so much money for that. Like, definitely did not fall in love with this quad, but won't be decluttering. Okay, you guys, y'all know I love NARS so much as a brand, so I basically want every eyeshadow palette that they ever come out with. I'm really struggling to convince myself not to buy the 6-pan face palette that is coming out for this holiday, because I, again, kind of like to collect them, but like they literally all kind of look the same. Granted, there are some differences, but a palette that I didn't end up falling in love with from NARS but won't declutter, because again, kind of feel like I'm collecting NARS at this point, is the NARS Climax palette. And I will say I do really enjoy this palette for the metallics, or the shimmer metallic shades. Why do I never know, like, do I call it a shimmer? Do I call it a metallic? I know like some formulas are different. Why do I always struggle to just figure out what I want to call it? Who cares? It is the 4 matte shades in this palette that just like muddied together, didn't blend well together. I was super unimpressed with and really disappointed, because I was so excited for this color story. Now I will say I do really like these 2 shades are fine, but it's really when I start to mix in any of these 2 darker shades that I just don't have much luck. But the metallics in this palette are kind of like that chunkier, really intense sort of metallic. And I just absolutely love the metallics as well, like aside from the mattes not being great. But this isn't a palette that I absolutely love, and I probably could find similar metallics throughout my collection if I really wanted to. Still won't declutter this. I also really like the packaging, but definitely didn't turn into a favorite. Okay, one from ColourPop. I have the ColourPop Tinkerbell palette. I've thought about decluttering this before, but I do find that this palette has some shades within this that are really kind of unique to my collection. Like, I don't feel like I have this like Kelly green sort of shade. Same with the shade Tink up here. I didn't love this palette because I felt like the mattes were a little bit more difficult to work with. They weren't like the top-notch ColourPop formula, and I was really excited for this color story, and I still look at this and think it's really pretty, but like this Neverland shade I didn't feel like performed very well. I felt like the shade Awake, in theory, I really like, because it's like this midnight blue, like really deep blue shade, but I felt like it kind of muddied up. So that's where I've like, it was not superior quality. I also don't feel like it's like the most everyday wearable. Like, a part of me wishes there was, but I don't really know what I would trade it out for. Maybe this shade, trade it out for like a lighter mauve pink shimmer, so that I feel like this palette would be like a little bit more wearable in my opinion, but who am I to say? This isn't a palette created just for me. Didn't fall in love with this one, but won't declutter, because I do feel like it adds uniqueness to my collection that I don't have elsewhere. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys this one, and if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you probably already know. But the Melt Mary Jane palette. Oh my goodness. Is this the most frustrating palette, I think, throughout my entire collection to work with? It has so much fallout, especially in some of the metallic shades that I was so excited for. There is so much fallout. Even if you lay down a glitter glue, you're gonna get glitter on your face. You're gonna have fallout with this palette. But what I'm telling you is the look on the eyes is so freaking beautiful. It's worth it in my opinion, especially if you're not gonna be wearing your look for like the whole day. Or you know what, if you're going out, maybe you can get away with it, because by the end of the night, you've already had like so many drinks. You can just blame it on having too much to drink, not on like your eyeshadow just being annoying and having so much fallout. Do you get what I'm saying? But this one from Melt, oh my gosh, it's just an incredibly frustrating palette to reach for. I do not feel excited to reach for this very much throughout the year, just because it takes more effort, it takes more blending. I know I'm gonna have fallout, but I always love the way that my eye look turns out, which is why I can't see myself decluttering this. I thought about it, but I can't do it. All right, this next one is new to my collection. I either bought it at the end of last year or the beginning of this year, started testing this year. It is the Glam Light Scooby-Doo Rut Row Raggy palette. This is the first palette I've like used from Glamlight that I didn't find every shade to work just immaculately for me. I did really struggle with these 2 matte shades down here. These 6 shades up here, so good, perfect. But I just really struggled with these mattes. I felt like they were a little bit patchy, a little bit harder to work with and blend. And then I wish we had 1 shade. I wish these 2 shades were just a little bit different. That's my one complaint with this. But let me tell you, like when I say that Scooby-Doo was my entire youth growing up, like it was my entire youth. Like I can see my sister, I feel like she had this very specific Scooby-Doo shirt. Her and I would literally...
So my family and I took a road trip every single year. We live in Minnesota. We would take a road trip down to Jekyll Island, Georgia. We had this big red van. And we had, like this was literally when like VHS was still around. We had a TV in our car, just thinking about it, because it was like literally bungee corded to the ground. And we would literally watch Scooby-Doo multiple times throughout the trip down to Georgia. I'm surprised our VHS tape didn't like break. And oh my gosh, I like love, I'm talking about the human version of Scooby-Doo, the first one. Love that so much. But even the cartoon, like our entire youth, my sister and I watched so much Scooby-Doo. So
obviously I could never declutter this palette for the Scooby-Doo theme alone. I love that we have the bats up here, and I do really like the color story. I do really like these 6 shades as well, but it just is like not an absolute favorite palette. It's not a color story I'm reaching for on an everyday basis, but will not be decluttering this for the Scooby-Doo theme alone. And then the 10th and final palette that I have to talk about, you guys, is from Alien Cosmetics, which is now Unearthly Cosmetics, and it is the Not Normal palette. So this palette, color story, not every day, not something that I look into and I think instantly I know what to do with this palette. I don't even feel like I'm super familiar with the quality. Like I don't feel like I've used it consistently enough to have a really good understanding of how I like the shades. Like I've used all the shades and I remember that they work just fine, but I haven't done a lot of like mixing and matching to see like, do they just work well on their own? Do they work well trying to blend with anything and everything? I'm not super sure. But even though it's not a palette I feel super excited to reach for, because it definitely feels intimidating to me, there is no denying the absolute just beauty in this artwork. I absolutely love this, and this is something that like I will keep just for the packaging. Like I will keep. This is, I think, possibly my favorite palette outer packaging in my entire collection. Like it's quite possible that it is. So even though I don't love this, color story doesn't necessarily make the most sense to me in my uncreative, unartistic mind, will keep just for the packaging alone. So those are the 10 palettes throughout my collection that I don't love, not in love with them, but also will not declutter. It's kind of like, you know, like you have like your little like, it's kind of like when you're dating and you know that someone's not like husband material, but like you also don't want to like completely cut ties because you never know when you're going to be bored at 10 p.m. some night. That's what these are. Anyway, you guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I would love to know what palettes you have throughout your collection that you don't love, but you're keeping them around for when you're bored at 10 p.m. at night. Let a girl know in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting my channel, as you guys always do. I appreciate you guys more than you know, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.